Moonbrella!
So how did this half-finished Getting Over It clone win an award that it didn't even qualify for? To answer that, I'll have to start from a few months ago, where I was preparing to playtest my game at some local events. It has an unconventional control scheme for a platformer. There's no typical jump button. You have to aim the umbrella down and jab it into the ground to vault over obstacles. So I wanted to see how many people could beat the demo, and how many would find the secret QR codes I hid throughout it. But before I could playtest at these events, first, I had to get accepted. There were 2 events I had my eye on. Now these were recurring events, and I'd been accepted for both of them in the past with a previous game, but I had also been rejected from both of them before. So I wanted to get the game looking as good as I could before submitting it. I made some extra screens to display on the robot, including multiple facial expressions to give it a bit more soul. The dying sunflower makes it sad. Never mind, out of sight, out of mind. A shocked face for when you're going above 12.5 meters per second. A pain face when you enter the water, with a depleting health bar. I ended up scrapping the old meter system for the sake of simplicity, and to keep the 1-bit color palette. But there's another more glaring problem here. The water was just a translucent blue rectangle. So I made another shader with my good pal Voronoi Noise. It has 2 layers, one in front and one behind the player. It's looking a lot better, but I feel like water is supposed to move when you touch it. It's a tile-based game, so I actually just made some frames of water moving back and forth. And then when the player touches the water, the animation ripples along the surface. It took some attempts to get the timing right, but I think it turned out pretty good for tile-based animation. The last major improvement was for the sky. When you're floating around, it was kinda hard to tell which direction you were moving. So I decided that some particles would help to give a frame of reference. The game is about exploring the world, collecting flowers for conservation. So I figured I could litter the sky with dandelion seeds. I wanted them to spawn more commonly near the ground, so I used a dithered texture as a clip mask, so that they'd only spawn on the white pixels. They also move if you brush past them, like you're creating subtle wind. With these visual improvements, I updated the trailer for submission, and fortunately, I was accepted for both events. First up was the smaller scale event, Indie Dev Night, presented by Z Games, held at Lost Souls Karaoke Bar. I was next to some other cool games. I've done lots of testing for Schrodinger's Cat Burglar, basically Stray with Portal-like puzzles. Can recommend. These games were in karaoke rooms, but they also had spots in the common area, which is where I wanted to be, so anyone just standing around could watch the game. But I also wanted room for 2 gameplay setups, one running off my MacBook, and one off of a Steam Deck hooked up to a TV. I also had my old laptop, which was too old to run the game, but I had it playing a looping video of the trailer with a QR code to scan at the end. If nobody was playing, the video would show people what they were getting into before they picked up a controller. But I didn't really have to worry about that, since there was usually at least one person playing at any given time. 2 gameplay setups had the benefit of doubling the amount of people that could play the game in one night, and also meant that I didn't have to kick anyone off if they were taking too long. I hid some secret QR codes throughout the demo for those interested in exploring after completing it. At the end of the demo, you get given the flashlight item, which allows you to see in the dark areas of the map. Right next to the upgrade, I had 2 QR codes on the wall, one for feedback, and the other was a link to the Steam page. So how effective were these? Well, I ended up with 8 whole wish lists from the night, and 1 feedback form response, which is not a lot, but the audience was a lot of other game developers that already knew about the game. And I did end up finding out that sometimes the QR codes wouldn't scan properly, and I realized it was probably the noisy brick background. Even though it works fine on my machine, there's a lot of different phones. So I later added some paint splotches behind the codes to make them more readable. Some people were a bit more explorative with the flashlight, and may not have even realized the demo was over, which caused me to add some text saying so. But it was encouraging since they probably enjoyed the demo enough to want more. There were a few more dark areas in the demo, so I figured I should put something there. Why not more QR codes? The first hidden code was behind this wall at the start of the demo, which leads to the Discord, which 2 people did find. Someone thought it was funny to gatekeep the Discord for only the most dedicated fans. There was another hidden code down in the cave where you find the hook upgrade. This one led to this very YouTube channel. I mean, it had to lead somewhere. 2 people also found this one. And there may or may not be a secret 5th code, which someone may or may not have gotten a little close to finding. But hey, maybe you'll be the first to find it when I release the demo. Eventually. Overall, the night was a success, with lots of positive and some constructive feedback. To find out exactly how many people played the game, I ran Steam background recordings on both setups, and was able to go back and count the number of players, which ended up being 28. So how many people beat it? 43%. I was happy enough with this since it can be a difficult game, but I did want to get it up to 50% at the next event, which will mean some changes. The most common place that people left the demo was after dying to the water in the cave. It was probably frustrating losing a bunch of progress and having to traverse all the way back to get another chance at it. This got me thinking about how often I wanted checkpoints. At one end of the spectrum, there are games where a single mistake can mean massive progress loss. But when you do eventually beat a difficult section, the feeling of relief and satisfaction is unmatched. On the other end, games with frequent checkpoints allow for more experimentation and less repeated content. I tend to prefer games on this end of the spectrum, but Moonbrella's level design currently lean towards the other end. But what if you could have the best of both worlds? When thinking of solutions to this, I remembered Ori and the Blind Forest, where you could spend some energy to make your own checkpoints. And I thought I could put my own spin on it. In between each major checkpoint, you get one temporary checkpoint, which you can place on any flat ground. After progressing through a section, you may find that you placed it too early, which means you can lose a little more progress than you wanted. But after you die, you can just pick it back up again and put it further down the line. But if you die after you pick it up, but before you place it down again, you will respawn at a main checkpoint. That sucks. But it's actually why I like this idea. You have to make the conscious decision that you're good enough at a section to do it without dying. It gives you infinite practice attempts, but it can still deliver on the tense feeling of having to eventually do it without a safety net. That's the theory anyway. In practice, it might be hard to communicate to the player exactly how you should use it. I ended up adding a button prompt just before the first water hazard, and also, the first time you use it, a text box appears explaining how it works. I tried to make this text as concise as possible, but I know that many players still aren't going to read and comprehend this much text. They have a game they want to get back to. But I was hoping it was enough to get the completion rate up to 50% at the next event, the Queensland Games Festival, where I was stationed downstairs? I've been there twice before and I didn't even know there was a downstairs. How are people going to find my game? Well, it turns out, plenty of people did find downstairs, in part due to this handy dandy sign, and there were pretty much always 2 people playing the game at any given time. Another improvement I added after the previous event was a prompt after 30 seconds of inactivity to restart the demo, so I didn't have to watch the station like a hawk for the full 7 hours and restart the demo manually. Even though I was there for 95% of the time, I did take a few breaks to check out the rest of the festival. Lots of cool games being shown. Every year, Ian Anderson makes a video compilation of each dev talking about their game, including me. Link in the description if you want to see that. A change I made to my booth from the last event was having QR code printouts, since only having it at the end of the trailer video was halving the time that the gameplay footage was shown. I also had some unused business cards I made for a previous game, and I was kind of surprised how popular these were. People seem to be just taking these instead of scanning the codes. I wonder how many people checked it later and saw Sumorbit and went, I don't remember that. Good to know for next time though. From my more thorough QR code efforts, I did get 4 feedback responses this time, but only 11 wish lists. Clearly these events weren't very effective at gathering wish lists, but it was more about seeing how people reacted to the game. There were a bunch of people that really liked it, so that was encouraging. So what was the completion rate? 30%. Significantly lower than the previous event. One thing that I didn't factor in was the difference in audience. Indie Dev Night was targeted more towards adults that were proficient in games. But this event had a much broader reach, with a larger portion of casual gamers, and plenty of kids who struggled to reach the trigger buttons on the PS5 controller. This was evident by the number of people who struggled with the first jump, and started mashing the face buttons and accidentally found the temporary checkpoint button early. Another point of contention was what I call the game journalist test. This wall is too high to jump over, so you have to look around and see that there's another platform up here. When you reach it, there's a button prompt to open the umbrella and float across. Most people I've tested with in the past get this after a few attempts, but many people at this event struggle with it. After watching the 60th playthrough on 10x speed and seeing 3 people give up on the journalist test in a row, I thought it might be worth revisiting. People were even failing it sometimes doing the intended strategy. The reason for the design is to make absolutely sure that the player knows how the umbrella floating works. It's surprisingly hard to make a jump that can't be bypassed without floating. After revisiting the design, I found that it was totally possible to make it more forgiving and still force a float. So now, even if people don't perfectly drift off of the edge, they can still make it across. There were also some positive changes to the way people played from last time. I added a text box that pops up after your first optional collectible that lets you know that you can change the color palette of your robot screen, and people actually did use them, which was nice. The temporary checkpoint system did get some use. A few people even picked it up and replaced it later like I intended. But part of the problem was that people seemed to ignore the button prompt. Maybe they didn't get that this was supposed to be a face button on the controller, but I think I'll have to do some more testing to see if this system can be understood. If nothing else, it can be a cool assist mode feature, or a way for people to practice sections of the game for speedruns. Overall, another successful event. I ended up with over 100 people testing the game over the 2 events. As I was packing up, one of the organisers came up and told me, "Hey, you won an award. You need to go up to the stage area now." Oh, cool. So I went upstairs and waited patiently in the crowd. So I was told I was getting an award, but I didn't know what award. I knew about the People's Choice, where the organisers gave each person a sticker that walked in the door, so that they could give it to their favourite game at the event. I ended up getting 15 stickers, which was cool. But not enough to trump Key Fairy, which I was happy to see win. Next up was
Best Emerging,
an award for the best game that was a studio's first major title.
Moonbrella!
Yeah, this is my first game for sure. So I may have technically not qualified for this award, but it's not like I applied for it. And generally, emerging does just mean people that are in the early stages of their career. So yeah, Moonbrella is officially an award-winning game. A real physical award. And I also got a sick pull quote.
It infuriated me to just the right degree.
Speaking of that game that doesn't exist, welcome to the first Sumorbit Royale, where Patreon members can customize a planet to sumo wrestle. It's just $3 for each devlog video, rather than monthly since I don't make a video every month. Congrats to Ricky Clean for winning, and thanks to my first 2 Patreon supporters.